This is a growler protection kit for those of you that buy fine craft beer, and you put it in a growler like this growler. You know that once you open your growler, you have to consume your beer in a short period of time, because if you don't, the air that gets inside your growler contains oxygen, and oxygen is the enemy of food and beverage products. It will cause your beer to oxidize, and the flavors will go off, and so your fine craft beer will not be as enjoyable if you say were to cap your growler off, put it back in the refrigerator, and wait a week or 10 days. You notice the quality will degrade. Then there's a couple of things that happen. You have the oxygen inside the head space, which can in the air, which can cause your beer to oxidize, plus the fact that when you take the cap off your growler, you release the pressure that's built up in the head space, and so your beer tends to go flat over time. So a growler protection kit should do two things. One, it should enable you to remove all of the air from the head space, purging the oxygen being the objective there. And then two, it should allow you to repressurize the head space so that your beer will not go flat. And even if it has lost some of its carbonation level, pressurizing the head space will provide sufficient CO2 so that it will recarbonate the rest of the beer. Well, let me show you basically the idea behind that. Now, this is just a toothpick, and everybody knows that you have to have air and oxygen to sustain a flame. So if you put this in this bottle, you can see that there's air in that bottle, and the air is what enables that toothpick to burn. But if you were to take some CO2, either from one of these CO2 bulbs installed in the handheld dispenser that comes with the growler protection kit, or from this canister of CO2, and you put a little CO2 in your bottle, not much, you know, a couple of squirts does the trick. Now, you can see that your headspace has been completely purged of all the air, and in getting rid of the oxygen, you see the flame goes out immediately. So, you know, the air is gone. This bottle is now a pristine environment for protecting any beer that might be in there. Now, this is one way to put CO2 in your bottle. Another way is just know that this is beer freshly poured into this bottle just a few minutes ago before starting this video. And know this, that CO2 is coming out of solution, and it's coming up and filling up the headspace. We haven't put any CO2 in here with you know, injecting it, but I want you to know that the chances are that there's adequate CO2 in the headspace now to have displaced all of the air. Let's see. Yep, sure enough. The headspace here is largely filled with CO2, so it won't support a flame. But I'll tell you what, this is a Fizzgiz cap, has a special patented valve that is manufactured by the Fizzgiz company. The growler preservation kit has growler caps with this same valve installed, and so the valve allows you to inject CO2 inside the bottle. But I just told you there's probably ample CO2 inside here, and it's of course at 15 psi, basic atmospheric pressure. So let's say that you had just opened your growler and you'd consumed half your beer, and this bottle kind of emulates a small growler. To give you an idea of what you could do to get the air out. Let's say you had your cap back on there. You give your growler a little bit of a shake, okay, and you see it starts to foam up. Then just open it a bit and allow the the bubbles to kind of come up. Let's see if I can do that a little bit more demonstratively. Okay, so we let that come up. Now, for sure, as you see, a lot of the CO2 has escaped from the beers, created bubbles, and it's moving up into the headspace. And as you already know, it will force out air above it. So, that might seem a little bit drastic in that you're losing carbonation from your beer. But if you have a growler protection kit like this, a little handy dispenser can let you put all the CO2 back. Now, I'm not going to take that dispenser out, but I want to show you what happens. Just watch this closely. You see, as you crush the bubbles, job done. All of the CO2 that was in those bubbles has now been pushed back. Most all of that will go back into the beer over time. Your head space is now completely 100% CO2 filled, and this beer, even though it has been opened and is, half consumed, is like the beer when it was originally placed into the growler. The beer was filled up to the shoulders of the growler, and as it was being filled, CO2 began to build up in the headspace, pushing away the air, removing all the oxygen. So this beer will last as long in your fridge as it would have lasted if you'd have never opened it in the first place, because it has a pristine 100% CO2 headspace environment. Now, all of the CO2 that you just put into the beer is not, or into the container is not in the beer yet. It takes time. If you sit this in the fridge overnight, then the pressure will equalize, distribute itself throughout the beer and the headspace, and you will reach equilibrium, and that will be a perfectly conditioned beer at that point in time. So, there are two ways then to, and I will open this. Actually, I'm going to shake this back up and to kind of help distribute the CO2, and we'll wait for just a moment, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. There are a couple of ways. One is to just put CO2 into the bottle like that, and as you've already seen, that removes enough of the air to allow your bottle to be completely full of CO2. And the same thing happens if you shake your beer up and allow the bubbles to come up. And let's see if that can be more demonstrated here. There you go. Okay, so that is a completely 100% CO2 filled headspace. And again, if you remember, to regain any CO2 that might be lost, just simply push it down, crush the bubbles, and you're back in business. All right, same thing applies to a full-size growler. If you want, you can just simply, actually, let me show you that this growler is now full of air. And it will support a flame. Okay, you can see that burning there. But if you'll purge it with some CO2, and CO2 is dirt cheap, usually just a couple of squirts will do the trick. Now, the beer growler is completely full of CO2. The air is gone. It will not support a flame. You see that? It went out instantly. So that's how you fill your growler headspace with CO2 to purge all of the air and get rid of the pesky oxygen that has a negative effect on your beer. We can let some of that CO2 off, and you can play around with the level of carbonation that you want. This beer is obviously over carbonated because I'm pushing CO2 inside this bottle at about 60 psi, which is 3 or 4 times more than what you would normally find your beer carbonated at. You can stop it, Ray.